We're on item number 13, the Downtown Car Park Strategic Transport Outcomes and Funding. I note there is a confidential item on this to follow. This open report notes the process that councillors have taken to get to today. There's been a lot of reporting and discussion on this, and I'm aware of this some public interest. So to be clear, while we're in public, the item on the agenda today is not about whether to proceed with a sale. That decision was made by the Finance and Performance Committee back in December 2020, before my time. It seemed to be unanimous at the time. An interesting decision, but here we are. The time we have been, this item we've been asked to look at in confidence soon is about council funding for some of the transport outcomes, and in particular whether we should pay for an expensive micromobility hub as a floor in the building. Given that the item is commercially sensitive and we do need to get some legal advice about a couple of matters, I'm going to suggest we don't have a debate on the item, but that way might happen. Anyhow, I'm going to move this, which is that the information contained in this report, we note, and that the report is confidential due to commercial things. Do I have a seconder for that? At least seconded by Councillor Darby. Okay. Rather than doing this twice, and given the litigation threats, I'd like to move straight to confidential, but we don't know that. Beforehand, given the issues associated with this, I'm going to ask Meredith to just give us a view on what we should and shouldn't do in open and confidential, given the fact that there are a couple of litigation threats floating around, and that if some of those come, you'll find that discovery will mean that everything you've done will be found out. Members, some of you have been involved with this a lot longer than me. I have to say I'm not happy to find myself in a situation which is a result of something that took place before I became here and doing something, and I have told the Chief Executive and the rest of my time here, if we sell anything, it will be in return for money. I sell a lot of property. I don't sell property to get a better letterbox. I sell it to get money. Just can you fill out a little bit of background on this, please, there, Meredith?
So our recommendation today, and our view is that it's open to you to move into confidential to consider the matters on the agenda today. Eke Panuku has been on Council's behalf in negotiations with a publicly listed company. The matters that you're considering relate to the commercial activities of Council. The discussions could potentially impact Precinct's commercial position, and legal advice is likely to be required during the course of the discussions. We therefore consider that you've got grounds to move into confidential, and we would recommend that you do so.
Of Meredith while she's there, and then we'll go to question. Councillor Fletcher, you had a question first, and then Councillor Walker.
My question probably is better directed to Phil Wilson, but may require the advice from Meredith, but I'm happy to wait until I can direct it to Phil Wilson.
To ask a question of the Chief Executive, and we'll see where we go.
Before we move into confidential, and I have sought legal advice on this, I believe that I have been wrongly advised by council officers in the preceding meetings that have led up to this. I have taken from the advice that officers have given us, whether it related to seismic issues, whether it related to micromobility, whether it related to all of those things that are outlined in the previous agendas and resolutions, the very clear understanding I had was that would be conditional. And I'm assuming that that is why we are here today. And therefore, I do not believe that the decision has been taken. And I want legal advice on that particular matter. I realise you've got a double jeopardy. You've got, on the one hand, the fear of judicial review from one party, you've got precinct here, and I do not want to compromise you by having a discussion around some of those matters in the open agenda. But I do want recorded, and I realise that I'm making quite a bold statement on this, and that is why I have taken legal advice. I believe I have been misled by officers leading up to the situation that we are now in, and I feel very unhappy about it.
So hang on, you're talking about officers during the previous council?
Yes, Your Worship. I'm
Okay,
not
I just
talking
want to
about
make
this council. I'm
during
not
the
talking about
time-
you. I'm talking about the advice and the interpretation of the advice and the understanding that certain factors were conditional, which is leading to where we are today.
Right, so that's all during the previous time. It's not this advice you've had this late. No.
No, that is not in your term.
Getting that timing right. 'cause
And
it's-
I'm very mindful of the fact that you were very upset over the sale of the Civic Administration building, and that you said that you would never, it wouldn't have happened under your watch. So what
not
I'm
the
wanting
civil
to be
administration
assured...
building, you're quite wrong. I didn't have a view on that at all.
Oh, I thought during the election campaign
No,
when
I didn't
people
say that.
discussed it. However, the issue for me at the moment is one of the importance of trust and what I feel is a serious breach of trust between me as an elected member and the council officers.
Whether or not that's a wise thing to be raising at the moment, but Mr. The Chief Executive will carefully review what he might say to that.
All I can say is that I don't think I can reasonably comment without knowing what the advice was, in what context it was given. So I'm really happy to engage with Councillor Fletcher to understand that, but without having any details, I don't think I can comment, and it probably wouldn't be appropriate in this forum, but I'm really happy to engage.
I would appreciate engaging with you on that, and for that reason, I believe this matter should be deferred today.
Councillor Walker.
I just want to agree with Councillor Fletcher. I believe I've been misled. If you want me to document that, I'm quite happy to do that. But
I absolutely want you to document it, because there are people's reputations at stake here, and I think we've got to get to the bottom of it at some point.
So we know from the information that's been presented to us that the situation has been changed. It's certainly been changed around micro-mobility, as Christine Fletcher has mentioned. We've received information around seismic that's also, I'd suggest, at odds with information that we've received. We've got further information that's coming to us even in this agenda that goes to the bus facilities and the like that are different to earlier information that we've received. Everything's changing. What follows from that is that earlier, any parties that were expressing interest or involved in any tendering process may well have been subject to that information that I'd suggest
So we've got...
has since changed and was incomplete. Now,
I think you're making allegations in a public state here, so be very careful. I wasn't here at all this part. You're all going back to something that happened in the past. But we have an open report that suggests we should take this in confidentiality. So you bravely wander into the flak yourself, mate, but I'm just warning you, this is all from way before my time, but if you're going to make statements, be very, very careful that you're going to be saying, both of you.
The Auckland Council exists in perpetual succession. It doesn't worry me too much whether it's the previous term or it's now. We're engaged in a process that's continuing. That is the case. This council exists in perpetual succession. I can appreciate that you weren't the mayor then, but I was certainly.
Point of order. Point of order, 1.7C, discussion of questions not before the GB or committee. I'm wanting to understand, Mayor, what is this is a lot of debating points, but are we in questions, or because I know that we're not debating yet the confidential item, this is the info report, so I'd like to know exactly where we're at. This is not debating, as far as I understand.
We gathered today to discuss whether or not to have a multimodal cycle scooter thing inside this building. That's what we're discussing. So if somehow or other you're advised that a multimodal scooter wasn't a multimodal scooter, well, that's one thing. But that's what we're here to discuss at the moment. So the point of order is of relevance.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there were a range of provisos other than just a micro-mobility facility.
Well, I think that's what the paper is about.
And they're documented. It's more than just a micro-mobility facility.
Well, this item is about whether or not we should pay for an expensive micro-mobility hub, which you people somehow or other convince yourself is a good idea. Personally, I don't think it's a very good idea at all, but then again, that's for the day's debate.
I think what you're hearing, Mr. Mayor, is that there are some councillors that are challenging the process that has occurred to date. I think Councillor Fletcher's been quite explicit. I'm agreeing with that.
But that's not a discussion for here. That's a discussion about some process which was passed unanimously. So, and there was one subsection from this which was passed 17.4, which you voted for and Councillor Watson voted against. It's in the papers there today. And so even if you had been misled, Ms Fletcher, it wouldn't have made any difference to the result because it was passed.
The issue, Your Worship, is whether or not your statement that this is a done deal is the case.
Any statement. I have made no statements. I've just said that I'm not happy to find myself in a situation.
In ruling out people speaking in public forum, you implied the decision had been made. So
well,
I'm
a decision has
that.
been made. It's not a decision I would have made, but it is a decision that has been made.
Oh, come on.
Councillor Turner.
My question is to Meredith, please, as a new councillor sitting here without any background to this subject, but here because the public have sent me here. That's their only way every 3 years to put direction into this council. My question to you is there any reason I'm being asked to vote here on an issue? Yet I've heard all this talk about litigation and being sued. Is there anything that I should consider why I can't exercise my vote in the way I think the public want me to?
My job is to advise you on legal risk and to let you know what the legal risk is associated with the various decisions that you make. But ultimately, the decisions that are made around this table are made by the elected members, taking into account the advice and information that you receive.
But because I'm not equipped for this sort of stuff, it's a little out of my tradie realm, I need to know if there's anything here today that inhibits my ability to exercise my vote. I've got a thing presented to me, I decide to represent the public in the way they want me to. Is there anything stopping me just exercising my vote?
Nothing at all, because we are voting for noting the receipt of a paper and that there will be a confidential follow-up due to commercial aspects. Nothing unusual about that. That's all you're being asked to do. Just read what you're being debating about. Quite simple. We do lots and lots of things for commercial reasons. Every time we let a contract go, we go into confidentiality because of the fact that there's money changing and there's competitive processes. That's well known. So so just consider, have a look. You've been asked to vote on whether you are noting the information contained in this report and that the report is confidential due to commercial aspects of the council's car parking operations contained in the report. That's all you're being asked to do here now.
A lot of lawyers for a very small problem. Thank you.
No, well, Councillor Fletcher and Councillor Walker have raised questions which they should have raised years ago, that they felt that they were misled. It's taken a long time for that to come to the surface, I must say. But I'm not going to question because I have no idea what you were told or not told. So that answers that. Mr. Watson, please.
Yep, thanks. And my questions will be focused on points 5 and 6 of the executive summary of this paper, item 13, and what is also on the public record by way of resolutions. So I guess my first question just of Meredith is really just a clarification of what the term, legal term subject to a set of outcomes. So my layman's reading of that phrase, subject to, means essentially dependent or conditional upon those outcomes being met. Is that a reasonable assumption?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So if I go to what's on the public record then, Mr. Mayor, and this is from the 3rd of June 2021, which the minutes are available to the public, have been since 2021. A number of strategic transport outcomes are identified. Provision of a bus facility, provision for a flexible, accessible, multimodal transport hub that does a whole number of things. There's also an outcome there that goes to the number of short stay car parks, including details of car parking required to meet the objectives of the development and any additional public short stay car parking they propose to provide. So in terms of that subject to, any subsequent decisions then are based on really the fulfilment of those strategic outcomes, aren't they, by way of this body?
So the requirements of your resolution around sale are that any development agreement materially achieves the agreed development outcomes. We can give you detailed advice in confidential if you would like advice on whether the development agreement meets those outcomes. But our view is that those outcomes are met by the development agreement. There is a degree of complexity around the various interlocking resolutions and which outcomes needed to be included in the development agreement and which outside, but I'd be happy to advise further on that in confidential.
So I guess it goes to the notion there's a series of resolutions here, and a number of which use that phrase, subject to the following requirements being met. I guess if you're going to use the word materially, that's somewhat subjective as to how materially anything is fulfilled. So who then is making that call on whether it's material or not?
Ultimately, it's a requirement of the council's requirement that it materially achieve those outcomes.
Yeah. And the council being us as the governing body in today's proceedings.
Look, the requirement is that the development agreement meet those outcomes. So the question is whether or not it meets those outcomes.
Yeah. Okay. So Mr. Mayor, and this is a broader question as to the way forward here. So over the last few weeks, in particular, there's been a lot of information produced in respect of this matter. I would suggest that parts of it have not been clarified adequately in terms of what their implications are as far as our responsibility as decision makers go. I would say in terms of that information, a lot of it which is on Nexus hasn't even been able to be printed off for councillors. So personally, when I have a situation where there's large amounts of different bits and pieces that go to this, from legal opinions to valuations to agenda minutes, I don't think it's a satisfactory state of affairs that elected people can't even get that information printed off to aid their decision making today. To my way of reading, that's a operational shortcoming in the way this matter has been conducted today, especially given the significance of the decision that's to be made. So I'd put that on the record and put it in the context of the changing nature of some of the advice and some of the obligations in terms of those strategic outcomes that I've referred to at the start.
Okay, well, I'm not trying to shut down public debate, but we are dealing with confidential commercial negotiations which were started under the previous council. And there are some matters that are subject to legal threats. And we need to discuss that in advice and confidence to protect the legal privilege attaching. I do note that the debate about the transport outcomes you agreed for this was in public, and that was well before my time. But so there has been public debate before we got to the stage of commercial negotiations, but now we're here. We're into commercial negotiations. See, yes, transparency is important. In this case, the responsible thing is to discuss this matter in confidence, and I'd please respect that. But we are really meeting to discuss whether or not the paper is about whether or not we have a multimodal scooter thing inside this building. That's what we're discussing.
So my final question in respect of that, Mr. Mayor, is that if one of these outcomes or one of these stipulations in respect of the whole tender process is subsequently removed, and this is a question for you, Meredith, does that in any way impact upon the process as a whole that has informed the decision of any party who's entered into this process if something is changed after the fact?
Well, it is a negotiation.
Yeah, can talk to the council legal.
My view is there's no legal impediment to you taking the decisions that are on the confidential agenda. If you'd like more advice around that, I'd be happy to give that in confidential.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I guess just the one that goes with that, and it goes to the notion of change, of changed circumstances. So this matter has been going on for the best part of 3 years. So my question is, to what extent is council then able to take account of changed circumstances in respect of the agreements such as that have been made, particularly over a period of 3 years where there's been a lot of changes in terms of climate change imperatives, the financial position of the council, the changing nature of the central city, etc., etc. So in the case of an instance where something is dragged on for a considerable period of time, there have been significant changes, what is the ability of council then as one of the parties to react to those changes?
Look, in general terms, and we talk about this in lots of different settings, changes of circumstances are obviously relevant to your decision making and can impact on the range of options that are available to you. If you'd like to discuss this in further detail, I can provide legal advice and confidential.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Lee.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I support colleagues who are seeking a deferral of this item, and I do so on the grounds that I don't believe, and I don't see any reference anywhere that we've met the requirements for decision-making under Section 77 and Section 78 of the Local Government Act, which also requires us to take on board community views for a decision of this importance, and seek to identify all reasonable practicable options and assess the options in terms of their advantage and disadvantage. Now, it could be, and has been argued, asserted even, that this is already decided. The chief executive of Heart of the City wasn't allowed to speak about her concerns of the impacts of this on the central business district, because it's already decided. So, okay, but
The chief executive didn't apply to.
Sorry, I'll move on from that.
Well, it's just not true. That person did not apply.
I'll move on from that. But you yourself, Mr. Mayor, are talking about negotiations, and I believe you're right. You're talking about negotiations, and we know that the deal has not been signed.
Yeah,
and so
a question. Please
we're kind of a wee bit in Alice in Wonderland world where it's all been done before, and nothing really to decide much, but actually the decision we will have to take today is momentous on its potential impacts on the downtown and the waterfront. And I take on board the concerns we should have about reputation. If we renege on a deal, that's not good. But we don't have a deal as yet, as you note by talking about negotiations. You negotiate before the deal, not after. I understand.
What's your question?
The question is, where is the AT board resolutions? They are key parties in the original resolutions in December 2020. Their first decision-making resolution, which was followed up in June 2021 with the conditions, the development outcome conditions of that decision referred, and those subject to conditions were referred to in the December the 20th resolution, and those conditions are obviously changed, which is why we need to go into this confidential section very soon and make decisions. So where is that information? That is a question, but there are other comments I want to make, so I reserve my right to speak on this further. So let's have all the information as I look. We can routinely ignore the requirements of the Local Government Act, but we know full well that this council is going to be challenged in court. And if you're worried about reputation, we should also be worried about losing in the court and damaging our reputation even further, and it ain't good now. So let's have all the information. Could I please have, for starters, the decisions by the Auckland Transport Board? I'm not aware of them because I wasn't on the board at that time in September.
Okay, well, that's a point of view. It's irrelevant. So at the moment, we have got a statement. Do we receive the information in this report, and that the report is confidential due to the commercial aspects of the council? I've moved. It's been seconded. I'm going to put. Beg your pardon? There is. Question. If you want to ask that question, you've got to ask it to the AT board.
Where's the question? So I'll give you the question. I haven't got an answer, Mr. Mayor.
Well, if you want to get something from the AT board, you ask the AT board.
No. You're the boss. You're running the show, and you can't blame anyone else. You should provide that for us to make a appropriate decision under the terms of the Local Government Act. It's conditional, going back to December 2000.
Listen here.
Where's the information from the AT board?
You're only voting on whether or not we receive the information in front of you and noting there's a confidential thing. You don't need to have what you're asking for to make that. If you don't know how to make that one,
So is that no?
well, you haven't got it.
Remember, where this might end up, be careful in your answer.
We're in the middle of a vote, Chair.
I don't recall, because I had my hand up to speak. I've only
Yeah.
asked a question.
Well, Councillor Sayers has actually got a question, and then you can have another crack in a minute, but Councillor Sayers.
I wanted to make a comment about one of the comments that you made earlier. So are we in questions or in debate on this open item? It's been moved.
Trying to finish questions, but it sounds as though we have. And Councillor Lee's asked a question about where is the AT report. Well, it's probably somewhere, but I don't know.
So it's just clarification around you saying that it was passed unanimously. It was carried on that day, and there were 4 councillors that voted against the approval.
No, that's not quite
of it.
right either. Actually, I've got that information here. There was 4 councillors who voted against the need for car parking, but the actual sale was carried unanimously. It's in the pack.
It doesn't say carried unanimously, it says carried. And also, if you note clause B of what we voted against, the 4 councillors, Watson, Stewart, Fletcher and Sayers, if you refer to clause B, I remember voting against that. So I just want to clarify that it's a bit hard to say it was unanimous, Mayor, when it was just carried. There weren't any, appreciating there weren't any notes against. I just wanted to, because you weren't there on the day.
Simply reading the information which was provided for you in your board papers today under the confidential section, which records that the 2 decision made back in 2020.
And I'm just bringing your attention to clause B in that second vote.
Well, if you look in your papers, you'll find them there yourself.
Your Worship, most of us don't have access to printed agendas. We're working from Nexus, which is not
Well,
always
sorry,
the
they're
most
in there.
user-friendly.
Those are printed off Nexus, but you will have had access to the agenda that you were present at the time, of course, and you subsequently approved the minutes. So,
Can I point of order? Could I just, of clarification, we were in the middle of a vote and then a whole lot of conversation happened again.
that's true. I think we'll carry on and put the vote.
No, there's people.
Point of order, I only asked a question. I put my hand up to speak.
Okay. Speak.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that this matter be deferred to the next governing body of this council.
And such an amendment has already been lodged with the Chief Executive.
So do you really want to refer an open process report? Is that what you wanted to do?
Yes, because I believe that there is information and there are discussions that need to be had amongst officers, and this matter would be better dealt with next month.
Okay, well, have you got a seconder for that? Because
I'll
bearing in
second that.
mind that you can defer that, but it still doesn't stop us going into confidentiality and dealing with the confidential agenda. All you're doing is deferring a noting. So if you want to, we'll go and do that after this, and you can defer a noting of it. It's kind of pointless, but
The item doesn't say that.
it's your speciality.
The amendment doesn't say that. Can you read out the amendment? You've got a written copy of it. From Councillor Lee.
It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Williamson. It's been forwarded to council staff this morning. It may have been caught up in the system somewhere, but I think Mr Wilson has a copy of it.
I'm desperately looking for it now.
Thank you, Mr Wilson. I'm very aware that Councillor Williamson is in a difficult situation, is unable to participate in the debate because he's at Waikato Hospital. So I was simply wanting that this could be put,
I can't find it.
and he had shown the grace to send it through to Mr Wilson beforehand.
Is it in the outbox?
Okay, right at the moment we have a mover and a second of a deferral motion, so we'll put the deferral motion. Do we want to defer noting this paper for a month.
Point of order, Meredith should move back.
Can you put it up on the screen? My understanding is that
Can we
Point of order.
We need to move Meredith back, please.
Yeah.
Councillor Fletcher has moved a procedural motion to defer the item. You need to vote on it.
But currently you have moved a procedural item to defer the debate. It's been seconded and so it has to be put. That's what procedural items do, and you know that. So all those in favour of deferring...
I do know that, Your Worship. I was endeavouring because we were being told that we were midway through a vote. We were not midway through a vote. We were waiting to actually have the debate on the matter. Meredith has now stepped away, and I was very worried that Councillor Richard Hills was saying that we were midway through a debate. So perhaps I prematurely moved the deferral motion that Councillor Williamson had prepared. If that is available, I think it should be put up on screen.
Yeah, but first of all, you've currently moved a deferral motion, so we have to put that.
I'm happy to withdraw that in favour of the amendment that Councillor Williamson, who's online, I understand, is ready to move.
Well, we haven't got it yet to put it up yet, so currently then you've withdrawn the move to defer a vote on receiving a note. Beats me.
I just want to clarify, I actually do not have an amendment or a notice of motion or any such thing from Councillor Williamson or Councillor Lee.
I haven't got it.
No, so
Shall I
have
read
it, I'm
it out?
afraid.
I can't, somebody's gremlins in the system, my apologies. But I'll read it out, that the governing body, in light of changed circumstances and a developing possible legal challenge, defer item C1, downtown car park, to enable staff to provide additional information and advice to councillors to report back to the governing body no earlier than the 29th of February 2024 governing body meeting, which is, I think, is the next the meeting Councillor Fletcher referred to. And I'm moving that the nominal seconder is Councillor Williamson. He may be not able to, I'm sure. There are plenty of other potential seconders in the room. Where the hell is it gone?
We'll just halt things while we take some advice, because this is a sudden change of something which we're supposed to have heard of, but we never did, which you've just written up now and we haven't got. So I'm just hold things while we take some advice. Thank you.
Can I nip in and speak to it while the officers are conferring, Mr. Mayor?
I'm adjourning the meeting for 5 minutes while we clarify exactly whether there is or isn't something or other that's been sent.
Thank you, Your Worship.
I note that you wanted to know where the AP board was. Where's your bloody amendment?
I was just trying to
Where the hell
buy
is
some time.
Where the hell is that
Righto, at the risk of deep humiliation, I'm going to open the meeting again and reconvene it. I'm not quite sure what's happened in the last couple of minutes, but as it stands, we have a moved and seconded motion
Your
to
Worship, I withdrew that.
receive the note this report, and that's the only live thing I've got at the moment.
If I can perhaps try and assist the meeting. So I'm aware of an amendment coming seeking to defer the item. My advice is that that should be considered when we get to the item in the confidential section of the agenda.
That's a good idea.
The chair is accepting of the fact that there will be such an amendment and that it'll be debated at that point. It does give rise to the possible need for advice, which will only be able to be given in confidential, so that's why it needs to be done there. So my suggestion is that the Mayor put the motion to move to deal with this item, and then we will move into confidential.
Now, to complete the vote we started several minutes ago, to note the information contained in this report and that the report is confidential due to the commercial aspects of the council's car parking operations, not sale, in the report. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
The contrary. Carried. Now, no. We now have a motion to move into a confidential.
I'll second your move, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. To exclude the public from the following part of the proceedings in this meeting and agree that the number of people listed below who are parties to the thing can be present, but we could still have a motion in there to defer if that's what you wish to do. So we're going to go into confidentiality, and it allows those people there to be. That's been moved and seconded. I've got two questions from Walker and Watson.
Can you turn his mic on? Can you turn your microphone on, please?
I question whether there is any need for those people to be in the room if it is a commercially sensitive issue, and the commercial sensitivity involves the parties, the other parties, which
The point of that is that they are to be allowed to present and then leave. Okay, so they won't be there during the point time. You also, Kath Handley from Waiheke has been allowed to present and leave. It's just so that they can come in, but they won't be voting and they won't be there when we have a discussion. And if you defer it, they won't. Nothing will happen.
This is the first time I've seen that. You must appreciate that.
Possibly, but I mean, well, that's been moved and seconded anyhow, so you can consider that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the words there state, be permitted to remain for confidential item C1 confidential. There isn't any mention there that they will, they'll be leaving after some presentation that they're making.
What you're saying is they'd be permitted to present.
That is correct. This is a very sensitive process, and my concern is it be done properly. And as it stands now, I don't believe it is.
Well, you've been a party to several things not done properly, so that's possibly true. You've got more
I
experience
object to those words, Mr. Mayor. I object to those words, and I would ask those words of yours to be taken down, and I can do that under standing orders. Thank you.
You can indeed.
So I've asked for those words to be taken down.
Well, I'm not going to take them down because you have been a party to several of those.
It is my right to ask for those words to be taken down. It's not subject to any vote. It's in standing orders. Thank you.
It is, and it's my ruling that I don't have to do that, and that's my ruling.
It is not your choice, sir.
I'm sorry, I'm ruling on that. Now, we come back to the point. Come back to you
Point of order. Point of order.
Your point of order is which?
Which one?
Which
You
point
do
of
not
order?
have. You do not have the authority to rule over
I'm afraid
A councillor asking for the words to be taken down. That's in standing orders.
If I might make another suggestion, I've asked Sandra to include some additional words in the resolution so it's absolutely clear that the purposes for which those people might be here is to make a presentation after which they will be asked to leave.
Well, that should be down there.
It's just coming, Councillor.
made an excellent point and we have amended it accordingly. Councillor Lee.
My question is, Mr Mayor, if those worthy people, all of them, about half the number of the councillors present around the table, are here to make a presentation, in other words, a sales pitch, how can we argue that it's all been decided? It hasn't been decided, has it? Let's be honest about it. We should send back an apology.
The debate is about whether or not we have a multimodal scooter place inside the building.
Surely the
I have a
decision should
question,
be
Mr.
about
Mayor.
best for Auckland.
I mean, I have no idea as to whether or not the information that these people want to present is confidential or not. I do know that the item is confidential, but not their presentation. And if their presentation is not confidential, it should be heard in public. So I object to going into confidential to hear a presentation that arguably should be heard in public.
Well, you can vote accordingly then, can't you?
Through your worship, I'm advised that the presentation contains material that is confidential, and given we're talking about a publicly listed entity, there would be disclosure considerations. That was the advice to myself.
Have you seen the presentation?
No, I have not.
Question, would it be appropriate to deal with the deferral motion before we retain these people in the room? Because obviously this is going to cost a lot of money for the company sitting around, and I think probably we would deal with the deferral motion so they, perhaps with a bit of luck, they may be able to return to work.
We can deal with that as the first item under confidential. Okay? So at this stage here, I'm going to put the motion, do we move into confidential or not? All those in favour say aye.
1.4.9, objecting to words. When a member objects to any words used by another member in a speech and wants the minutes to record their objection, they must object when the words are used and not after any other member has spoken. Chairperson must order the minutes to record the objection. Must order. There's no discretion. Thank you.
So the particular words were from me suggesting that you had experience of items that had not come to fruition, which is correct.
The exact words are on the video recording. I'm sure the officers will be able to check.
All right, well, we'll deal with that when you found them. But in the meantime, I'm going to put the motion of whether they're going to go into thing. Councillor Walker? Watson, sorry.
Yep,
mate. I realise that, sorry.
I just wanted to speak very briefly to the motion to go into confidential, and I guess at the risk of stating the obvious, Mr Mayor, the other party to this item, of course, is the public, and I'm not sure they'll be terribly reassured by proceedings to date. That's hardly been particularly business-like in that respect, especially as it goes to such a an important item. And I would just remind members that this has been has a backdrop of 3 years. This matter has been going on, and during that time, as far as that public interest goes, and these aren't my words, we've had reference in respect to the downtown car park in terms of the function served there being an important equity consideration. The city centre is a place for everyone. The downtown is important for the city centre's vibrancy and economy, and the importance of this particular location in that, and the necessity for council to oblige with its public obligation outcomes. Now, I would just say, and I haven't heard any reference to it thus far, given that backdrop, given the heightened sensitivity to this proposal, I'm not reassured with the consideration that's been given to the public interest here. There are certainly elements that are confidential, we agree with that, but as far as informing the public and given the, the clear confusion around the table to any number of things to do with the proposal we're considering here today, I'm not certain how that public interest and obligation is going to be met through what occurs today, because they've been shut down from speaking in a number of instances. They've heard contradictory statements and assurances. They have heard councillors talk about a lack of confidence in the process. So my rhetorical question at the end of all that is, what is going to be done by the organisation to inform and reassure the public who will be feeling anything but to date?
I've heard that, but in fact there is only one party to the negotiation at the moment. They're being represented. No, commentators are not other parties. Sorry. Yeah, and so the council is a party to the negotiation which started in 2020, which you people approved, and the two parties there are the council and the parties who are going to come into this thing and catch up with where they've got to. That's what happens. And so, Councillor Fletcher has something to say about
in
this.
speaking to the motion to go into confidential, on the basis that the assurance that you have given us and the advice that we have received from our CEO, Phil Wilson, I'm willing to support it. I think it's unfortunate that it is so difficult in this place to raise issues of objection. I mean, it would be very easy for those who do support what's happening today to mock those of us who have got genuine concerns. It's hard to express those concerns in the churn of this environment, but when you get past the confrontation of the debating chamber here, I think what is underlying this is the genuine concern that has been raised by hundreds of Aucklanders with me. Is this the right decision for people with disabilities? Is this the right decision for Auckland moving forward? Is it good for business? Is it good for the environment? I don't know the answers to all of those things. And in light of the concerns that have been raised with me, in light of the information that I feel I have not been given, I believe it is time for us to take a moment to pause and reflect on these. This is no way an aspersion on precinct. There are some fantastic people that have been part of this, that will be present in the confidential section to make a presentation to us. I've got the highest regard for those folk. This is no disrespect to them. This is simply about exercising good kaitiaki for the people of Tamaki Makaurau. This is about the assets that have been built up over a long period of time, and if we have any doubt and if there is any uncertainty, it is our obligation as elected members to actually drill down into it. So I thank Phil Wilson
I totally agree with that.
guidance
and
that
I
he has
presume
given us, and the assurance from you that you will entertain an amendment when we go into confidential. So thank you.
I agree with all of those statements, and all of those things are presumably what the cautions and exercise you made when you made the decision in 2020 to agree to enter into a negotiation to sell, now, and which you did. And that's something I wouldn't do, but you did. And so I'm going to put the motion to go into confidential. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Okay, record that. That's Councillor Lee was that? And Walker? Okay, thank you. It's carried, so we're going to confidentiality, and I would ask the members of the public to please vacate, and those named members in this are welcome to stay and join us, plus any members of staff and organisations, including Kath Handley. Are you quite happy? And I'll ask for those that want to go into.
Just take a couple of minutes.
So I'm adjourning until we clear the room and get prepared.